Temi, full of excitement, had gone back into their compound to play with sparklers, an early Christmas gift from a kind neighbor. She laughed as she turned around in circles, watching the bright sparks light up the darkness. But then, something went wrong. One of the sparklers slipped from her hand and landed on dry grass close to the house. The village of Ayegun was a place where Christmas was more than a holiday. It was a time of color, joy, and celebration. Every December, the streets came alive with the rhythm of drums and cheerful songs. The delicious aroma of roasted goat's meat filled the air, blending with the loud crowds of fireworks that lit up the night. Children dashed about in their brand new outfits, their laughter echoing as they played and chased each other. Homes sparkled with colorful lights and handmade decorations, and families came together to prepare grand feasts that stretched over several days. But in the middle of all the excitement, the Adebayo's family house stood out for a different reason. Their small, unpainted home looked more like a shadow among the brightly lit homes. While others danced, sang, and feasted, the Adebayo's family's windows remained tightly shut and their compound silent. In Ayegun, everyone talked about the Adebayo's family. People often wondered aloud, how can a family ignore Christmas? Some said they were poor to celebrate, but those who knew the Adebayo's family dismissed this. Mr. Adebayo was a carpenter, and while they weren't rich, they earned enough to join the celebrations if they wanted to. Others thought it might be because of their religion, but this didn't make sense either. The Adebayo's families were Christians, just like most people in the village. Still, year after year, their house stayed quiet during Christmas, with no lights, music, or signs of celebration. The real reason they didn't celebrate, however, was far more painful than anyone could imagine. Many years ago, when the Adebayo's family was smaller and had just moved into their new home, Christmas was a time of great joy for them. Ifeoluwa, Mr. Adebayo's wife and mother of three children, Temi, Mide, and Tunde, loved everything about the season. Her oldest child, Temi, was especially excited about Christmas. At just 6 years old, Temi was a bright and cheerful girl who loved singing carols and helping her mother cook. She was also very responsible for her age, always looking after her younger siblings, Mide, who was 4, and Tunde, who was 2, whenever their parents were away. Temi's laughter filled the house and brought life to their home. She was the heart of the family, her energy and joy making every Christmas feel magical. But on Christmas Day, tragedy struck. It was a windy evening, and the entire village had gathered at the square to celebrate with singing and dancing. The Adebayo's family joined in too, as the square was just in front of their house. While the adults danced and shouted, the children played nearby, their laughter echoing in the night. Semi, full of excitement, had gone back into their compound to play with sparklers, an early Christmas gift from a kind neighbor. She laughed as she turned around in circles, watching the bright sparks light up the darkness. But then, something went wrong. One of the sparklers slipped from her hand and landed on dry grass close to the house. The dry grass caught fire immediately, and the flames, fueled by the strong harmattan breeze, began to spread rapidly. In a matter of moments, the fire reached the thatched roof of the Adebayo's family house. The cheerful Christmas celebration turned into chaos as the flames engulfed their home before anyone could stop it. The villagers at the square ran to help when they saw the flames, bringing buckets of water to put out the fire. Everyone worked together, but by the time the fire was put out, the damage was done. The Adebayo's family house was almost destroyed, and worst of all, little Temi was gone. The tragedy shattered the family. Losing their home was painful, but losing Temi broke their hearts in a way that nothing could fix. From that moment, Christmas became a season of sorrow for them. Ifeoluwa, filled with guilt and grief, banned any celebration of the holiday. The sights of decorations, the sounds of carols, and even the smell of festive food became unbearable reminders of what they had lost. For Ifeoluwa, Christmas was no longer a time of happiness, but a wound that never healed. Her husband, Mr. Adebayo, understood her pain and agreed to her wishes, though he quietly missed the joy that Christmas once brought. The family moved to a new house, and life slowly went on. Mrs. Adebayo, who now gave birth to two more children, making four of them, Mide, Tunde, Deji, and the youngest, Dami, grew up in a home where Christmas was just another quiet day. While the rest of the village celebrated, the Adebayo's family lived with their memories, carrying the weight of their loss every December. Dami was born 8 years after Temi's death and knew nothing about the tragedy. No one in the family spoke of Temi, and he only knew that she was the reason they didn't celebrate Christmas. His understanding of Christmas came only from what he saw through the cracks in their wooden window. He watched as the other children in the village ran around in their bright, colorful clothes, setting off firecrackers and enjoying sweets. He could hear their happy voices calling each other to join in their games, their laughter filling the air. Each year, Dami felt a deep ache in his chest as he watched the celebrations from afar. He longed to join the fun, to wear new clothes, and taste the excitement of Christmas. But he never dared to ask his mother why their house stayed so quiet when the rest of the village was alive with joy. He sensed that the answer would only bring pain. This year, Dami turned 12, and his longing for Christmas felt stronger than ever. He often sat by the window, peeking through the small opening, his heart heavy as he watched the other children laughing and playing in their bright clothes. His older siblings, who are now used to the quietness of their home, accepted the lack of celebration. But Dami couldn't understand it. He didn't know why they never had a tree or why his mother never cooked special meals like the other families. He had overheard bits and pieces from his siblings about a tragedy that happened years ago, but no one had ever explained it to him. The whispers left him confused and even more curious. One evening, as the Amatan wind swept dust across the village, Dami sat alone in their small, quiet living room. His siblings were out fetching water, and his parents were resting in their room. He stared at the bare walls, his mind racing. Why couldn't his family try to celebrate, even just a little? He didn't think Temi would have wanted them to live this way, stuck in sadness year after year. That night, Dami made a decision. He was tired of the silence and the emptiness. This Christmas, he would find a way to bring back some of the joy they had lost, even if it was just a small spark. Over the next few days, Dami quietly began collecting small items from around the house. He found some old colored paper that had been tucked away in a corner for years and cut it into stripes to make paper chains. He also took a few candles from the kitchen, saving them for Christmas Eve. His siblings noticed what he was doing, but none of them said anything at first. Mide, now the eldest at 18, eventually noticed what Dami was up to. She understood the longing in his actions, but she also knew how much their mother avoided anything that reminded her of the past. Deep down, Mide too missed the joy that Christmas once brought. Though she hesitated, she couldn't bring herself to stop Dami. His desire to bring a little bit of happiness back into their home touched her in ways she couldn't express. Quietly, Mide joined Dami in his efforts. Together, they convinced their brothers, Deji, who was 14, and Tunde, who was 16, to help. They worked late into the night after their parents had gone to bed, creating small decorations and planning a simple meal. They decided to have the leftover yam pottage from that night, some biscuits, and zobo, something simple but special and festive without their parents' permission. On Christmas Eve, the Adebayo's family home remained as quiet as ever. Outside, the village was alive with music and laughter, the sounds of celebration filling the air. Inside, Dami and his siblings waited until their mother had fallen asleep. Then they quickly set up their small decorations. They hung the paper chains in one corner of the room and placed a single candle in the center of the table. Mide brought out the food they had prepared earlier and set it on the table, covering it with a cloth to keep it warm. The room was simple but filled with a quiet sense of hope and love. Ifeoluwa woke up in the middle of the night to get some water from the kitchen, and immediately she noticed something was different. She stepped into the living room and froze, her eyes taking in the decorations and the food. For a long moment, she stood silent, as the room was quiet except for the faint sounds of music and laughter coming in from the village. Dami stood nervously by the candle, unsure of how his mother would react. His siblings looked at their mom, their hearts beating fast with anticipation. Finally, Ifeoluwa turned to face her children. Her expression was unreadable, and her lips were pressed tightly together. "What is this?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Dami stepped forward, holding something in his hands. It was a framed photo of Temi, one of the few they still had. With care, he placed it gently on the table beside the candle. "Mama," he said quietly, "we miss Temi too. We thought maybe she would want us to be happy again." Ifeoluwa's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the photo of her daughter. Memories of Temi flooded back. Her laughter, her tiny hands helping in the kitchen, her voice singing Christmas carols. For the first time in years, Ifeoluwa allowed herself to feel the pain and the joy of those memories. She sat down at the table, her shoulders trembling with quiet sobs. Her children gathered around her, offering their support and holding her close. The candle flickered softly, casting a warm glow over their faces. They woke their father up, and that night, for the first time in years, the Adebayo's family shared a Christmas meal. They kept the celebration small and quiet, without fireworks or loud music, but it was filled with love and remembrance. Ifeoluwa spoke of Temi, sharing stories about her that the younger children had never heard. They laughed through their tears, finding comfort in each other's presence. In that simple, heartfelt moment, they were able to remember the joy of the past while healing the wounds of loss together. Ifeoluwa decided to allow her children to celebrate Christmas with the villagers once again, understanding that the death of Temi was not their fault. On Christmas Day, the Adebayo's family hesitated as they arrived at the village square, but they were welcomed with open arms. They brought a modest dish of jollof rice and goat's meat, the best they could offer. The villagers didn't care about the size of the contribution. They were simply overjoyed to see the Adebayo's family among them again. That Christmas, Mide, Deji, and Tunde danced for the first time in years, their laughter blending with that of the other children. Dami, the happiest of all, sat with his friends, his face glowing with joy. Ifeoluwa joined the other women in serving food, and Mr. Adebayo watched from a distance, his heart heavy with emotions he couldn't quite name. Slowly, the pain of the past began to fade, replaced by healing. The Adebayo's family learned to celebrate Christmas in their way, a way that honored both their loss and their love. In the end, the family that had once never celebrated Christmas became a reminder to everyone that, even in the darkest of times, the light of hope could shine again.